is here, and we're going to talk about your book.
Okay.
And so your story, you became a doctor, and you were fairly young from what your book was saying there, in your early 20s.
When this all started, or kind of thing?
Well, I guess we go back to, you started off, you were married at 22, I think you said?
Yeah.
And you were still in training
Yes.
at that point.
Oh, yeah. It was actually a month before I went to medical school that I got married.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And from there, your story is kind of different. Now, you did develop an opioid addiction, but your story is kind of different, where you didn't touch anything until you were
No.
35, I believe.
Yeah, it was probably around 33-ish, 34-ish, around in there. I'm not exactly positive, but it was... No, I never tried anything until I tried that day. And
Really?
It was, yeah.
So that's pretty unique for anybody. I mean, you hear a progression usually of somebody starting out with alcohol, marijuana, and then further on down the line. But yours, and that's usually at a younger age.
Yes, I know.
Right.
Well, yeah, I've often wondered, why did this all happen to me? I think it was partly a situational thing. I was sort of in the throes of a divorce at the time that I wasn't really handling very well. I wasn't used to sort of being the disruptor in the family instead of the healer kind of thing, and I was really taking that on hard. And then when I basically got introduced to this narcotic, basically, it's, for my story, it was pretty innocent at a friend's house, and then I tried it, and it was just like, whoa, like, this stuff made me feel very, peaceful and euphoric in a time when I wasn't feeling very good. And it's not that I took off right from there. Like, it took several months, but that feeling just sat there and would, be calling at me, kind of thing.
So, did you always feel the stress of having to be a high achiever?
Yeah, but I think I actually really enjoyed the stress of being a high achiever. I didn't mind that. What I really seemed to mind, and maybe it was an ego thing, was the fact that people were casting aspersions on me because of what had happened. And I know that that's probably was all in my own head. But I got pretty sick with it. It was almost like I developed almost like a PTSD kind of thing from going through the whole divorce and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I went for 3-6 months back and forth on this. I would take trips away and try to figure it out. And it was tough. I found it really tough, and I wasn't used to reaching out to people. That was the other thing.
Right. You're the doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't feel like I could.
Right.
So I couldn't show any weakness. So,
Is that a guy thing?
I think it's partly a guy thing. I think it's a professional thing. I think anyone who's in an authoritative position feels like they can't show their weaknesses around other people. Especially when you're in such a tiny community like that.
Right. And,
people see you doing everything. You're grocery shopping, you're going out to get stuff at the buildings, about anything.
Right.
So it was, I don't know. It was okay when things were great, but when things got bad, then I found being in a smaller place like that.
Right. You can't hide.
No.
There's nowhere to hide. Now, I have heard different people. Now, when you first graduated and you started to practice in Montague, and I've heard of people down there who had you as a doctor, and they speak well of you, and they said, it's too bad we lost a good doctor. So did you enjoyed being a doctor? You were good at it?
I loved it. Yeah, and I think I was good at it because I would treat the people like I would want someone treating me when they came in with things, and I would try to exhaust, any kind of a person who had some sort of symptoms. I would try to exhaust going down that path, and if I couldn't figure it out, I'd refer them to someone else that could. It wasn't rocket science, really. If I couldn't put it together, and sometimes I'd ask my other colleagues, because I had older colleagues there, that had been there for several years, and I'd ask them, and so I didn't mind. It was funny. I didn't mind asking for help professionally, but personally, I didn't.
Right.
I didn't like to do that, and that's where I got into trouble.
So I guess we'll start back to Have you ever heard of you probably have, Dr. Gabor Mate? He's a psychologist from Vancouver, and a lot of his books, he's done two or three books now on addictions. And his whole premise is that we get into addictions to heal mental pain. And he's worked with that different ayahuasca, different drugs to try and mitigate people's mental suffering. Would you agree? Because with you, that trigger was your divorce, really, and that sent you into a spiral. It was something that kind of maybe hit you at broadside, and you didn't see this coming, maybe. And it seems that something in somebody's life, some traumatic event, that's what triggers an addictive behavior.
Yeah, well, I think I even mentioned that in my book. I think for me, I think it's a combination of, just like he said, something transpires in your life that causes this emotional pain or something that you want to get rid of. And then, and at the same time, the substance sort of gets introduced or becomes available at that time. Because otherwise you're not going to get addicted to it if you don't touch it. Right. But it's I think it's a combination. For me, I felt definitely it was a combination of the two things. And then once you get going, it just basically sort of takes over your thinking and everything else. Once you get that relief from the emotional pain, because it's like anything, when it wears off, the pain's almost worse. Right. So you start chasing it.
And it started innocently. You said in the book, you say it started with a cough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it started with the cough, and it was a cough suppressant I took, which happens to have narcotics. That's what a lot of the strong prescription cough medicines have in them.
Codeine.
Actually, this would be oxycodone, which is like Percocet kind of thing. A lot of them do have codeine in them. Some of the other ones will have that in them. None of them have anything usually stronger than that, but they're usually good cough suppressants, those narcotics in general.
And so you say it just took a few months from that point to really...
Oh yeah, I remember that feeling, that the feeling it gave me. And when things started to sort of, become chaotic, I remember I was in a house with myself and bringing my kids to it on the weekend, trying to balance running back and forth with call, with picking them up and getting groceries, and it was, I don't know. I just thought that I could handle it without talking to anybody, because talking to my family was like talking to the wall, really, because they were really against what was going on at the time. So I didn't feel like I had anyone else.
The divorce, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and your father was a Presbyterian minister.
Yeah.
And what was your mother's role in the church? I'm not sure how they worked.
Really just the minister's wife. We really never did anything more than that. But she was my mother, and when I guess with any kind of parents, good or bad, sometimes wanting to please them is what you want. You don't want to disappoint them.
Right.
Especially when I've never been used to disappointing my parents. It's always been, I've always been the one that has sort of stepped up.
Right.
So I found myself in this very uneasy position. And it's hard to believe that my mind would blow it out of proportion like it did, but it did.
Right. So they looked... down on the whole divorce issue, that was not something that they promoted in any way. They probably did they kind of try and talk you into just saving the relationship? And
well, they tried to talk me, and they certainly talked me into taking time to figure it out, which I did, and not to make rash decisions about it, which I did. But I think almost that 6 months of going back and forth and everything was just so, like, it was hard. I found it very, very difficult. And I guess just because I thought that I should have it all together. And I just really didn't feel like I had it all together during this time. I felt like my life was totally chaotic. Plus, my home that I had my kids with, they basically had moved out of it. So I was in this home by myself with nothing in it. And just trying to do call and being up at night, by yourself. And it was just a bad time looking at it. But if I hadn't known that something was going to happen if I didn't take care of myself at that time, I probably would have. But I had no idea that this was going to transpire.
Right. Yeah. So from there, the divorce happens. You tried the cough syrup that worked. what happened after that?
Well, then I was, then basically I was starting to use narcotics, which was just oral narcotics, just Percocet, which was also in that cough medicine. I started using those like periodically, regularly through the day. And I had developed, I had a bad ankle, which I developed from running long distance. And that was starting to give me a lot of discomfort. And when I did that, when that started to happen, then I started to justify using the pain medication for that as well. Plus it was helping my other stuff that was going on. And I don't know, started pretty innocently at first, just taking it for discomfort. And, the only problem was I wasn't getting these from anybody. I thought, I'm the doctor, I know what I'm doing. I can just prescribe these for myself, which is just, what do they say? That's the, biggest fool you can have as a patient is your own self, and that's...
Yeah, and how does that work with your doctor? You've got your pad, you can just write yourself?
No, you can't. No,
okay.
No, I was getting stuff that people would be dropping off to the office. You can't physically write it. So let's say someone had gotten a prescription for something and it bothered their stomach or it made them constipated. They would turn it in to me or the pharmacy, and I just write them a new something.
Right.
Okay. And you sort of have to do that for accountability's sake. You even have to do that now. If you're going to write a new pain medication for somebody because they can't take something, they have to drop off what they had before,
right?
Or they could potentially be selling it to somebody. So you have to. But having it in my office in the situation I later developed became, I just started saying to myself, "Why am I doing this?"
Right.
It's not a good idea. And no one ever, I never ever talked about that at medical school or in my training or anything like that. Not to be, samples are different that the drug companies give you because none of this stuff is addicted. It's all like regular samples. But this stuff that people are dropping back to you, these are potentially stuff if you were in the hospital, you'd have them locked up.
Right. And these are back right at your office.
They're off in my office. Usually, they're usually in the office in a locked. We do keep them in a locked space,
right? So
no one could come into the office and get them. But they were there to give to people that, let's say, they never had a drug plan because some of the long-acting narcotics were very expensive, like hundreds of dollars a month.
Right.
So if you could maybe save someone, money on that doesn't have it, to give it a try at least. That's what you are supposed to do, but I got sick and just started helping myself.
Right. And the other thing too about not everybody who takes narcotics would get addicted to it.
No.
So again, that's, I guess, going back to that mental anguish. It's shutting off some kind of pain in your brain, and you keep going back. Would that be a fair description of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that not everyone would get that feeling either. There's some people that take narcotics and they get really sick to their stomach and they feel crappy.
Yeah.
But then there's other people, just like some people who drink, it sort of lights them up and they feel alive and they feel better. And other people, they drink and they get sleepy. It depends on how it affects us. So if you put me in a situation where I was like you said, an emotional pain, and then there's something there that I know that can help it. All the rationalization I can have in my head will not stop me from reaching that when I'm in, especially when I'm just starting and I have no idea that I'm going to develop a problem from it.
Right. So from there, you kind of did a slide downhill, and it really spiraled.
I actually stopped for about 6 months, and then when my brother died,
right,
I really blamed myself for that, because the last conversation we had was about him drinking and driving and all this stuff. And anyway, but yeah, I blame myself so much for that it was just another horrific emotional, just like a shock that was taken on me that I couldn't shake it when it started.
And for those who don't know your story, the last time you spoke to your brother, he was asking for narcotic, wasn't he? He was asking you as a doctor to write you a narcotic, and you couldn't help him.
No, I told him I wasn't allowed to, and at that time I was sober and I was very clear of my boundaries and stuff, because I when I got sick later on, they got extremely blurred, you know, to the point where I was doing stuff that I absolutely shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And that's, you know, I'm not proud of any of this stuff.
No.
I just tell this stuff because I'm trying to make people understand that people, when they get themselves in these situations, will do things that they normally wouldn't have. And I'm not justifying why they do it. I'm just trying to explain why people do it, so when they see their kids doing it or their friends doing it, they say, you know, it makes sense. It's not, we don't agree with it.
Right, right.
But we understand why they're doing it.
Right. And that was just another step down the line. Your brother passed away. I'm not sure if it was a suicide.
No, he was just, I believe he was reaching for his phone, because he had a seatbelt off, which he never does. He always has a seatbelt. So it went off the road. Okay. And then when he pulled it back on, it just sort of flipped over. And, and it was just like, he was right down the road from his house. So I think he was picking up the phone and told his wife he's almost home. And,
okay. So that was the last time you spoke to him there. And that was another, boom, another loss. It
was a loss, because, and I blame myself, because I had told him that I thought, you know, he should be able to drink, because he was in withdrawal from the Dilaudid. I had nothing I could give him. Right. And I said, go home and drink. And I just I said it very flippantly and never really thought. And I would know so much better now not to do that, because that's the last thing you want to tell someone.
And your brother, he had a history of mental illness, is that right?
He had bipolar illness, and it wasn't, he would just sort of get manic sometimes and do stuff that, you know, that was sort of outlandish. Okay. But it was usually more like spending money and stuff. It wasn't like wild stuff, but that was just some of the like, we were a lot closer years before that, but some of this had caused a friction between us, because I usually had to bail him out of these things. Right. And, you know, people think doctors have lots of money, but you're always chasing your taxes. And I remember taking my installment that I was supposed to pay Revenue Canada and giving it to, so I was behind. And it was like, anyway. Yeah. Added stress.
So in the throes and in the deepest part, you started to inject.
Yes.
And what was going through your head at that point? Were you thinking, this is getting way out of hand, I have to stop? Or were you totally oblivious because it felt so good you needed it?
Well, it wasn't even that I felt so good. It does initially when you get the quick rush, but it only lasts for 5 seconds. It just keeps you from feeling awful. So that's the whole problem, is you just keep trying to get through the day. And it would be every day I would say the same thing. I'm gonna stop tomorrow. I just got to get through today. Right. And I'm gonna try to put things in place so I don't have any responsibilities, and I can just lay here and go through. Because narcotic withdrawal will not kill you. You feel like it's going to, because it's a very, very, very uncomfortable thing. But I tried. I did try so many times, but I couldn't do it by myself.
It wasn't a fast skid downhill. It was a slow.
It was a slow thing, and it would be, you know, it was very. I did just like any other layperson. I would read, I would be reading about this, because it had just sort of started. Narcotic addiction was just becoming a big thing then. OxyContin was on the market. Vitamin had just come on the market. 2 slow-acting narcotics. And it had just become sort of a big thing. And my knowledge of what to do with all this stuff, I got from magazines and reading it, you know, just how to do this. Or I would look it up on the internet. You know, although the internet back then was really it was just starting to be big. It would have been, you know, in the early 2000s. So, but.
And when you talk in the book there about in training as a doctor, med training, you don't really cover addictions at all?
No, back at that time, no, we didn't. We talked about alcoholism. I remember we learned, like, it's called the cage criteria for alcoholism, which is, you know, do you feel guilty about your drinking? Do you ever have an eye opener? Things like that. But really, as far as narcotic addiction. And let's face it, back in those days, we only usually gave powerful narcotics to people dying of cancer.
True. Yeah.
So it wasn't you know, like you were really worried about them getting addicted to it, because they were, you know, it was the end of their life and you were making them comfortable. Right. But then when drug companies started to push the fact that we should be giving these to people with non-malignant pain, non-cancerous pain, where it's really impacting their life and their ability to be able to do things, it sort of made sense.
Right.
It really did, because they said that these long-acting ones aren't as they don't have all the peaks and troughs, and they're slow, gentle things, so they're going to be less likely to cause addiction. So, you know, that's, I don't know if the companies really believe this, but certainly physicians really got on board with all this, and they started using them a lot more.
What do you think of them now?
I know they're dangerous because of what I've been through.
Right.
The problem is they do make you feel, they can make you feel better, but and more, you know, and able to function better. But the problem is that you have to really be careful of the amount of time you take them, because once you take them for over 7 days, you're going to get a physical withdrawal from them, no matter if you're addicted to them or not.
Oh, really?
You know, addiction by definition is using a substance despite negative consequences.
Right.
Okay. So if you are just taking it and you get withdrawal from it, you're really not addicted to it. You're physically dependent on it, because your receptors are looking for it when it stops. If you take it for a week or so, people who are truly addicted, you know, they're taking it despite their life going to hell.
Right.
And the fact that they can't go to work, and they're ignoring their kids, and they're, you know, and they're ignoring their partner, because it really becomes your lover. It becomes everything to you.
So can you explain that too? You touched on it in the book as well. How does the opiates affect the receptors, and what receptors are we talking about here?
It's your pain receptors, to keep it simple. It's your pain receptors basically, but your pain also your emotional pain as well.
Right.
So what happens is they basically sit on there, and what they do is then that pain receptor is being bathed with something that makes it feel good.
Okay.
So you get a sense of like having a couple drinks. You know what I mean? That buzzed feeling that you feel. Now the thing with intravenous narcotics is that it comes on very quickly, but because it goes into your bloodstream, it gets pumped around and it wears off very quickly. So you're always sort of chasing the wear off, because when it wears off fast. So that becomes.
And describe that feeling. What does that feel like when you're coming down from this thing?
Oh yeah, well when you're coming down from it, first you'll start to have the sweats. Then it'll often give you diarrhea. It'll certainly make your bowels, your stomach all churn and everything like that. You get your legs basically, in particular your legs, and I don't know why, but they all get this, but they feel like they're crawling. You feel like you want to cut them off because they feel so uneasy. They just feel uncomfortable. And then the other thing that I would get is I would get this high tension noise in my head, like it was like a sound of high wires, like making this buzzing sound. You'll start to yawn. The other thing is you'll start to yawn like really, you can't stop it. You get the yawns. And the other thing you can do is start sneezing. That's the other little tip off that someone is in narcotic withdrawal. Sometimes is they'll sneeze or they'll yawn a lot. You'll see them sitting there yawning. But that's because, I'm not sure why that happens, but basically as they leave the receptors, what happens is your body is used to having that on it. So when it's gone, it's like having it's like having a coat on a cool day. Sometimes you don't notice if you don't have it on, but if you have it on, you take it off, then you really notice it. Then you're cold. Right. And same with these receptors for pain. Your pain becomes a lot worse when that stuff wears off it. Worse than it ever was. And that's what I always found out. I thought, oh my God, I can't stop this stuff because my pain's so intense. Right. But I just needed to get through it. And that's what happened when I finally went to Homewood and get it out of my system, and then everything down regulates and you feel normal again. It's quite a thing.
And then even when you do come off it, you still have a craving?
Well, I really within the first 5 days, technically your cravings are gone. Okay. Like you can be triggered. You can be triggered by, something being out there that you saw or something like that. But your physical triggers, within a week, really, it is out of your system. It is gone. And then people don't understand that only 10% of addiction is the substance. 90% of it is the way you're living your life. And you have to change all of that to to get yourself out of the situation you were in, to get yourself, that you got, whatever you did to get yourself in that in the first place.
Right.
You leave everything else the same, you're going to go right back to it.
And you were involved with marathon, right? Running, and so you had a good physical practice before you became a doctor, even.
Yes, yeah, I did, and but it would. That's what happened to me is I would get so busy, and that's what happened in this case. I got so busy with work, I got so busy with a new relationship, I got so busy with trying to juggle everything with my kids that I started to ignore my own health. And I wasn't eating right, I wasn't taking care of myself, I wasn't getting proper amount of sleep. And all that stuff sort of wears on you. And then, I found something that seemed to be the little, and I only expected to use it for a short amount of time. I never picked this up thinking I was going to go down this road and destroy my life, basically.
Yeah.
So, that was my intention at the time.
So what is it like to be a doctor? How demanding is that job?
I don't know. I loved it. I really did. It's some of it's difficult, and you're it all the time. Really, it never sort of goes away because you're always sort of in that role, even when when you're with your wife and stuff, you aren't. But aside from that, you're often called on at other games or anything you go to, or you're always sort of aware that this is a calling and that you may have to do something.
You're wearing a Superman cape all the time.
Well, not as actually a Superman cape. It's more like you have something that you can offer people if situations go awry. Same with a police officer or anyone else, I guess.
Right.
And that's not. I don't want people to use me all the time, but I always wanted people to be comfortable. I learned all this stuff for a reason. Never learned it just to keep myself,
When you go to a party, people bring up their ailments. And
now, you know what? People were pretty respectful. Sometimes they would, but people were pretty respectful. They just usually say, I'll see you at the office.
Right.
And, and I enjoyed medicine because I enjoyed figuring things, trying to figure things out. One thing that I wasn't particularly enjoying over the last few years was just taking longer to get tests and longer to get referrals and stuff like that. I was finding a little more challenging.
I guess that's a problem, the ongoing problem.
Exactly.
For the whole island.
It's for everybody.
For everywhere.
It's for everybody. So I knew that was, not something that I was going to be able to solve myself.
Right. But it's getting directed at you, I imagine, from some.
It would, and you would feel, and it's just like you're trying to put a puzzle together, and you're getting a piece mailed to you every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It's hard to do that.
Yeah.
But and you have someone who's obviously in distress, and they're worried about it, and you're trying to solve it for them. So I don't know. I enjoyed it. It wasn't the medicine that stressed me out so much that this all happened to me. It was, and I try to get that clear in the book. It was more my personal life.
So from there, you had how many? You really started, I guess, got to a point where you were buying narcotics from patients, and I think that seemed to be the clincher for you. You knew you were really going down a dark path, and things had to change.
In fact, technically, I'm the one that took my own narcotic license before the college did, because I remember writing them. I found that there's a board in Ottawa, I think it is, that you write and just ask for them to remove them, and I did that because I just knew. I knew that I had an issue, and that having the license to do this at that time was ridiculous.
Right.
Because and I knew the college was going to catch me eventually. I was trying not to get caught.
Right.
But
so you have that guilt on you as well.
Oh yeah.
So you've got the addiction, you've got the other problems, your emotional problems, and then you know what you're doing is wrong, and you're just waiting for the time to.
You're just waiting for the shoe to drop, and the problem is it's all tied to your financial life too, because you are the only income earner. I'm the only income earner, not only for myself but for child support and everything else. So I felt, this obligation to try to stop myself and do this myself, so I can keep working, because I knew if it all came out that it was going to really impact my ability to be able to practice in the future.
Now, you mentioned too that your mother was working as a secretary, right, in your office. So you had that. You're really connected to employing your family. So you were.
Although, you know what, she really did that more. It wasn't that she was trying to make money out of that. She was just doing it more to sort of help me out. Everyone sort of knew something was going on with me. You know, for the last year or two, people knew there was something wrong with me. They just couldn't figure out what it was.
Right.
The last thing, really, to be honest, they would ever think that it would be drugs, because that was not me.
Right.
In fact, when I would go to the pharmacy and initially because I would buy vials of Dilaudid from them for my office, and then I'd use them myself. Like, they just never had any. It wasn't even on their radar that I'd be doing that for myself.
Right.
Like, they just did not expect it. When it became so pervasive and I was doing it over and over, you know, everyone started going, "Oh my God, you know, is this really happening?" Right. And really, if you look at the timeline, they were pretty fast. You know, once they figured it out, within 6 months, I was off to Homewood. You know, it was pretty fast.
Was that an intervention that they came to you, or was that on your own?
No, the college. I was trying to quit on my own, but the college basically said you are going up for an addictions assessment to Homewood the couple of days after Mother's Day weekend in May.
An addictions assessment.
Yeah, I went for that first, which was a 48-hour assessment. And during that assessment, what they do is they ask you questions about, like, do you drink in the morning? How much do you drink? Do you ever use drugs? And I lied. Every one of those questions.
Right.
Totally lied.
Yeah.
But I knew I was going to be caught because I was given dirty urines when I went up there. They were full of stuff.
Right.
So, but I thought, I'll be home before they call me.
Right.
Because it won't come up till the next day.
Yep.
But they did end up catching me up there because I had left stuff in my bed and breakfast.
So why would they do the assessment at Homewood? Could they not do it closer? I mean, Homewood is in Toronto for anybody that doesn't know, right?
Yeah, it's in actually it was Marjorie Smith, who was the addiction doctor at the time, who told the college that's where I should go.
Okay.
Because that is the place that dealt with physicians and health professionals in particular. And physicians and health professionals are really good at trying to hide what they're doing because they have knowledge of what to do.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons they wanted, you know, if they're going to pull this guy's career away from underneath them and, you know, send him to rehab and everything, they want to have the best team looking at them that they can.
Right.
So they have all their I's dotted and T's crossed.
So
that's why I went there.
Is there a plan to, if they find anything within those 48 hours, to keep you there right away?
That's what the intent would have been. They just didn't have a bed, so they had to send me home and bring me back. But I was back within 5 days.
And you used before you went back in those 5 days?
Oh yeah, absolutely. and people, and that's a very dangerous time, actually.
Right.
A lot of people, that last hurrah before they go into rehab, they end up overdosing by mistake.
Well, yeah. Especially if your career is on the line too, right?
Exactly. So I had a friend who was a police officer in Halifax who came over and stayed with me that weekend to make sure I...
Oh, you mentioned him a couple times in your book there. You got a lot of respect for that guy.
Well, just because, you know, what he'd do is he would see me languishing. He'd never judge me about it. Like, he knew that, you know, I'd always been this straight-laced person, and he saw that I was sort of and he saw, like, it was like, my God, what's going on with him? So it was, you know, but he said, I'll just be here for you and we'll get you to rehab. And
you guys were friends beforehand?
Yeah, since grade 7.
Oh, okay, long-term friend.
Yeah.
And so you go to Homewood, you're there. What's the first day like?
It was hard, you know, because first of all, this doctor has to learn how to be a patient. Really hard. And they tell you that right when you come in the door. You work at that job, it's not you. And that is one thing I had to learn. I'm not a doctor. I work as a doctor when I work. Right. But that's, like, I had to get rid of that because that kept me sick. That identifying with that title, and as I was doing it when I first talked about it, you know, you feel like you're walking around with it all the time, but you shouldn't feel like that. Right. You know, it's not healthy, especially when things aren't going good, because you feel like you should be able to deal with it. So I had to learn to be a patient. I had to learn to follow all the rules. Like, they have sessions that they do every day. Starts at 8:30 in the morning. Starts earlier than that because they do a morning walk at like 6:45. You wake up at 6:15, and then if you are on that walk, they take your name down. You're gonna get called upon. They're gonna say something to you. You do that 3 times. You miss a session. You're late. Anything, you're gone.
Now, at this point, did you want the help?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
You really wanted to be there. You weren't going in begrudgingly. No. Is that what they do? Is our health professionals sent in there and they don't want to give it up? They're not ready?
Yeah.
So that's kind of makes it the whole progression harder. Of course, if you're not willingly going into these programs.
Oh, absolutely. Although it's to be honest, the first 3 days I was there, I was thinking to myself, when I get out, I'm just going to use once again. First 3 days.
Right.
And I remember thinking that. But then by the day, I think I went in on a Tuesday, by that weekend, I was gone. Like I thought, no way.
No way.
No way am I going to use this again.
Oh, really?
I'm done.
Really? Yeah. So were you withdrawing as you were there, having to go to these programs that they set up?
Well, what they do is I had to be honest with them and tell exactly how much I was using. So I'd be using about 8 eighths a day, which was crushed and injected. So that's about 38 milligrams of Dilaudid, and they can figure it out. So they put me on 40 milligrams of methadone for 2 days, 30 for 2 days, 20 for 2 days, 10, and then done.
Okay.
So they basically switched me over to methadone and then tapered me off it over a week and then stopped it.
And that works?
And that worked worked fantastic for me. I'd been so sick before. I still had symptoms. I felt miserable. But the other thing that really helped me was I was in this place where there was a whole bunch of other people that felt miserable.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I wasn't the only one laying in the couch with cold chills and stuff. There was a whole bunch of people there doing the same thing. So I didn't really feel like I could complain much about it. But everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
So it just gives you that sense of community, and we all support each other, and you can get through it. We can do it, and, one day at a time kind of thing.
And you talk about a doctor there who really kind of, you gravitated towards, you really kind of looked up to him, and he had been through the program himself. So what's that? He was a mentor to you. So how helpful was he in this whole recovery while you're at Homewood, having somebody like that? Oh,
tremendous. Because first of all, it was a physician that had gone through it, so it made me feel less bad about myself. Because this guy was a very intelligent, smart, upstanding person, and he had got himself in the same kind of trouble I got myself in.
Right.
So I felt less horrible about myself, and he was the one that really said, Grant, listen, you're a sick person, not a bad person. Like, this is an illness, and you need to get treatment for this. And when I heard that come from him, and he just had little tricks that he'd say that would make me think about, what was going on, or things that I had maybe been going over too much in my head that I really didn't need to be doing. And so he taught me, and plus I was having problems sleeping, and he taught me this visual imagery of how to basically fall asleep at night, which is helpful. So lots of little tricks and lots of little conversations, but strict.
Right.
Like there's no fooling around with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what would be the ramifications if you went out of line? You'd be sent away, or would you?
You'd basically be discharged.
Discharged.
Yeah, they discharge you. Now, they might bring you back in a month, but they would wait for every person that was there when you were there to leave. So you wouldn't have tainted the pool of people.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if you had, if you relapse, let's say because they go away on weekend passes.
Right.
Well, I didn't because I was too far away.
Right.
But let's say you used on the weekend, as long as you come back and tell them, listen, I messed up here, okay?
Yeah.
And so as long as you're honest about it, and they say okay, and then they actually get you to tell the whole group that you messed up and that you're going to do this differently and what you're going to do differently, because it usually isn't just one thing that happened that made you relapse. It's usually a cascade of things, like an airplane crash. It's not one thing that happened, it's a bunch of little things. And that's often what it is with a relapse. It's a bunch of little things that led to it.
So what are your triggers? Do you still have triggers now?
Not for narcotics. Really. No.
And you did start getting into alcohol.
Oh yeah, it touches the same receptors. Alcohol, in fact, touches more receptors than basically almost any drug, and because it's so socially acceptable.
Right.
And I remember after all of this happened years down the road, I would say to myself, well, I think I only drank a lot because I was using drugs. Because before that, I was a social drinker.
Right.
But, you know, as much as they told me once you cross the line with one, it's pretty hard to go back to the other. And they told me that. You have to end up finding it yourself, unfortunately. It's just...
Is that something that you say you still may have a trigger? Do you still have...
I don't know. I don't... It isn't much a trigger. I just avoid... You know, I avoid going into a place that had a bunch of drugs going on anyway. You know what I mean? I just don't... I don't love going in. Like, I'll go into a bar to go eat. Right. If there's something there to eat. But I won't go sit in a bar. It just doesn't make any sense for me.
Right.
Like, I don't mind going into a pub to eat something or something like that. But I won't go in by myself. And I certainly wouldn't go in by myself. It just would be... You know, if I was in there with my wife or something, that's different. The other thing I do have to watch is traveling. And it used to get me initially because...
Good times.
Yeah, well, you're away and, you know, it's what you normally do when you're away. And I had to really, you know, I had a couple of relapses when I was away until I started figuring that out. And now what I'll do is I'll often go to a meeting when I'm away. And then...
So it's not always, that's interesting about that. It's not always the bad times that get you triggered. It's the good times.
Oh, one of the worst things people always say is when you have a whole bunch of money in your pocket. Someone gives you your first paycheck when you're sober.
Right.
That's a dangerous time. Because you suddenly have something that, you know, you say, I'm just going to do it for one, you know, I'm just going to go tonight and do it. But it's like my story I tell in the book. My friend and I, you know, one night a relapse in Moncton, and this guy ends up paralyzed from the whole
right. Yeah. That was another thing, traumatic thing that happened to you. So how close of a friend was he? Well,
we were more in recovery kind of friends. That's when we developed friendship. We had never known each other before that. But we sort of bonded just because, I don't know, you all do early in recovery. Most of the people who are all like within a year or two of early recovery, when you go into all these meetings together, and you're going quite a bit, you start to develop relationships. And what happened to me at that time was I had just gone through a breakup. And I was not doing well. And instead of trying to reach out for people that probably could have helped me, I was probably reaching out for people that were, you know, that probably weren't doing great themselves. So we were both, you know, we were not good for each other.
Right. You just need a little nudge from each other. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that ended up in a car wreck for him, and you ended up in jail.
Yeah, I was in jail.
But then not because of the car wreck.
No. I actually only because I was walking around with no coat on in -20-degree weather. That's why they picked me up. I wasn't rude to them.
Right.
I don't remember any of it. I sort of remember getting to the police station and ended up in a jail cell, but that's all I remember. I don't remember.
And while that happened, your buddy took the keys, got in the car, took your jacket, was that right? And found your keys, took the vehicle, and then had an accident.
And I honestly, that vehicle would have been 4 miles away from where he was.
Wow.
I don't know how he ever found it. And not even know Moncton. And drunk, I imagine.
Oh, really? So he... 4 miles away from...
it was parked downtown in a parkade. Right. And we were at some bar up by Moncton City Hospital, up in that direction.
Okay.
Way up there. Almost to Costco.
And did he walk to find it?
He must have. I have no idea.
Right. So that was a shock that you had a police officer come in the next day into the cell, is that right?
They basically told me when I asked to have a drive, like I was totally shocked because I just never ever thought it would happen.
And that was after a relapse, after you had gone through Homewood.
Yes.
And this was strictly alcohol. And was there, after Homewood, was there any other use with narcotics after that? There was none.
No. You know what's so funny? I'm so terrified of them. It's you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm nervous that if I ever, and I've set this out with my doctors that if I ever got in a car accident or something and I needed, you know, medication for it,
right,
have me off it before I leave hospital. Do not give me a prescription when I leave, because I know that if you start giving me narcotics, that within a day I'll start changing what I'm saying, and I'll try to justify why I should get them, and I'll do. I know I will. I'd be lying to say that I wouldn't.
Right.
Because it will change my thinking around.
Wow. So you have to be careful of this alter ego almost inside of your head.
Well, it's sort of because it's triggered by the disease is always there. And it's triggered by taking the substance would just set it off again because, it's like being around a person who's really bad for you, but you're just totally in love with them. You know what I mean? It's just the worst thing that can...
Which you did.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, which I did do.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that when I read that, I thought, how bizarre is that? How you met her. Mm-hmm. I mean, that... there was a car accident. Mm-hmm. You pulled over on the side of the road. Yeah. And she was there helping the person who was in the car who was injured by the car accident. Mm-hmm. And you guys met. We met,
and if you really look at it, see, this is why I would say people say she's not a bad person. I spotted her and I sought her out because I knew that she had these weaknesses because I could see the track marks on her arm.
You saw that night?
Yeah, I knew. So I sought her out, knowing that this was potentially someone who is going to take me down that road of that kind of use, I think.
Is that right?
I when I look back on it, that's exactly what I was...
You think so?
I think so.
But just the oddity, just the coincidence of having a car.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't think I've ever in my whole life came upon an accident when it just happened and, nobody else was there. The cops weren't there yet. Yeah. But you were there. And did you help that guy?
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Yeah, I just helped him. We load them in the ambulance. We get everything right. I just sort of, once the paramedics come on, really, because they're better car accident scenes than doctors ever are, really. So I just basically just sort of provide initial care, and if the person had to be extracted before they got there, I try to stabilize their spine and stuff. But no, it just happened.
Wow. So from that incident, you got into a bad relationship, bad for both of you.
Yeah.
And you had to... How long were you with her?
Probably like year and a half, 2 years.
And you were both using narcotics at that point. That was before Homewood, of course. Yeah. So, and you had to end that relationship when you got back because she wasn't willing to quit. So you were going down a different road, and you had to separate at that point.
Well, honestly, the separation was her decision. All I did was she ended up getting clean. She ended up watching and saw how much healthier I was, and ended up getting clean. And then I knew, because everyone had told me, if we both get clean, we're going to be done. Because we had become so codependently sick on each other in that relationship, right? That once the drugs were gone, it was like, what did we have to be together anymore?
Yeah. So that was the only thing you had in common.
That was the only thing we had in common. So it was going to end, but it didn't make it any easier at that time. My ego I lost so much already that just, that was just burning on me. And then that's why I had that relapse. But that, fortunately scared the hell out of me when that happened in Moncton. It really did.
Right. So there was a point then did you decidedly give up your license?
No. Which I never knew. They took my license right from me the very first time I went to Homewood. Okay. I had no idea. I thought that I still had it. I wasn't made aware of it until they charged me with practicing without a license in January of the next year, because people were just asking me for prescriptions and I'd phone them in, or the refills of stuff. Actually, I wasn't working, but then they found out that they'd made a mistake, that they'd never actually sent me a registered letter. They thought they did. Okay. Yeah. So that was okay. So then I finally, I did apply for my license again in 2007, and I went back to work. Okay. And started as a locum doing, a little bit of work, and then I opened my own practice again in August of that year.
Okay. And how long did that go on?
I worked from 2007 to 2012.
Okay. Yeah. And what happened?
Well, what happened was that they were urine testing me all the time, every 2 weeks, and then I had a positive test for alcohol.
Oh, okay. So you couldn't do anything.
What's that?
You weren't allowed to do anything. Nothing. Okay.
Positive test, and in fact, it was sort of I had the test done in October, and for some reason they missed the results, and they never told me this until January. So suddenly in January, bang, I lose my license. January 2013, or 2012. And that was just not good for me, because then I had all this time in my hands. And anyway. So
from there, you lose your license. There's a point in your life there, you talk in the book there, that you were out of money, and you had to go back to labor work. How was that?
I liked it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I did. The poor guy. He's too honest. He never makes any money. He never charges people. So I was getting very little money too.
Right.
But it was more about the fact that this guy was in AA as well.
Okay.
And he was someone that I could hang around in the summer. And I grew up. My dad did carpentry stuff, and so I was always able to do most things a little bit. So it was good. It was good.
What does it do to your ego?
I had my ego deflated so much over that past year.
Okay.
And I think that's why I'm much healthier now than I probably have ever been, because I don't worry about what other people think of me. It's like when you put this out here, you can't worry about what people think of you. You have to think, okay, hopefully my story, because it was pretty messed up, is going to help someone else.
Right.
That's all you got to think. And that's doing that labor work with that guy. I remember I was wearing these old clothes and stuff, but there was something very refreshing about it at the time. Yeah.
I mean, if people look at being a doctor as pinnacle, you've got it kind of made. You have the respect of everyone around you. The money is good, and I think to be kind of dethroned, just looking from the outside, and if you had to go and do a labor job on one of your patients' homes, and you would,
I did.
Is that right?
Yeah, I did.
It happened.
Yeah,
and just a kind of awkward moment for both of you.
It did, but you know what? I had so many awkward moments, and then the court thing comes along the next year. I go back to working in 2008. Then they pressed the charges against me.
Right.
So that was a whole new humbling experience when I had to go to court and basically admit my transgressions from before. So I don't know. I think everything happens for a reason. I think that all that stuff happened to get me more prepared to maybe when I talk to people, they know I'm not going to judge them because I did all this messed up stuff myself. I did it.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that I think I'm better off. I might not have as much money as I used to have.
Right.
But I have enough to get along with. And I have. Will I go back and work someday? I don't know.
But you could?
Yeah, I'm almost positive. I have never actually physically asked them that question.
Right.
But I would assume just because it was alcohol this last time and I went away, myself. My family pulled an intervention and I went away myself. And when I notified them I went away, then they pulled my license because they have to find out why you're away.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just never answered that question for them. Because this time when it came time to think about going back, I thought to myself, Grant, you've tried this a few times. The nice thing about being a layperson is that if I do get into trouble, I can go tell my doctor right away. The way it was going was I still had to always hide it, because if I did, as soon as I told someone, I would lose my license.
Right.
See, this way, if I get, let's say I start to get in trouble, I can go to my doctor right away and get help right away. I don't have to, wait.
Right.
It isn't going to, because what happens is every time I get in trouble, they have to suspend you and they have to put it in the paper if they suspend you within 24 hours.
Okay.
So everybody knows.
Right.
So that's, it's just a thing for my own health. And the other thing is I really had in the back of my mind, I thought that I was going to write something about this, and I didn't want to have the confines to being a practicing physician and writing this stuff. Because your medical legal team, basically owns what you say. They can tell you what.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, they do. They do. Whenever we get in trouble, we get in trouble medically legally, they always say don't make any comments. That's why I was never able to comment on anything for all those years.
Right. And you do say a friend of yours works as a lawyer for the medical profession.
He is. He's done now because he pointed to a judgeship, but that's what he did for years.
Now, going back to Homewood, how big of a problem is this amongst health professionals, where they're exposed to these drugs and they have access to them? It has to be easier for people who work frontline to have access to those medications.
Yeah, it is. Usually doctors aren't a big problem because we normally don't have them. Normally people aren't dropping stuff, and I think they're getting better about that not happening. The people who you always get a little concerned about are nurses are at UGRIS because they're often the people in the hospital administrating the medications.
Right.
So, but they have a college too, and they're checked all the time. And if anyone, they have to count stuff, and they have to double count stuff. And if they go to give a narcotic, if they have to waste it, there's a lot of precautions in there now that weren't there 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
To keep people from, being able to substitute or, take it from work if they have gotten, and this is what I say to doctors, be careful when you're giving health professionals narcotics that they don't get in trouble with them, because if they do, they have a place where they can go get more of them.
Right, yeah.
So you're setting them up.
And I know I touched on this earlier, but how much of it is it needed? Are there other things doctors can prescribe that are going to be equally as effective instead of using these Percocets and opiates for people's pain?
Well, for chronic pain, that's a whole different story. But for immediate pain, they're probably the best thing that you can use. If you're in a trial, like if you have a kidney stone, nothing better than giving someone morphine, and they go from, like, they are so uncomfortable, and you give them this. That's what it's meant for. It's meant for post-operative pain and acute pain, like someone breaks their leg or something, and you're just trying to keep them comfortable until it heals. For those kind of things. Where we have to be careful is when we have people who have, chronic pain. Are you going to give them something that they're going to have to take forever? That's where the danger lies. And there are other things they've been trying. They try gabapentin, they try Lyrica, there's lots of other drugs, but they often have other side effects too.
Okay.
So there's no great answer for all this stuff.
Right.
There isn't, and that's part of, honestly, why I sort of wanted to step away from it, because I don't want someone, as much as I couldn't write it for them, I would have still people coming into my office and talking about how the Dilaudid made it feel much better for them than this did. And all.
Trying to tell you what to prescribe to them.
Yeah, and I can't even write it anyway because I didn't ever get my narcotic license back.
Right.
But I just, I just didn't want to be dealing with it.
So, obviously we hear the opioid problem throughout the States, throughout Canada. How big is that problem in Prince Edward Island? Is it a growing problem, or are we stemming it? Or
well, I do believe that we're stemming it. I know that they've set up. I know that they have an opioid committee that the government has set up, and that what they're trying to do is have that ahead of time in case fentanyl gets into our market or something, that they can start doing a public a public campaign, basically warning people not to be ingesting substances that are possibly mixed or anything like that, because that's what ends up happening. You end up having someone just introduce fentanyl into whatever it is, the other narcotics, basically to get it a little more potent, and it ends up killing people.
And what exactly is fentanyl again?
Fentanyl's just a narcotic, but its potency per unit, because it's such a small amount.
Right.
It's because it's like 100 times more powerful than morphine. So what basically happens with any narcotic is they can stop you from breathing.
Right.
Okay. They're a cough suppressant. That's why they keep you from coughing. If you give enough of it to any person, they will stop breathing. So fentanyl, unfortunately, the dose that is enough to make you stop breathing can be so small that that's what ends up happening.
That's what then they just
Prince ended up happening to Prince. Right. Ended up happening to a lot of people who take tainted Percocet that have some fentanyl in them or something. And heroin's not very known for doing that, because heroin, they cut it. It's a powder. They cut it on the street so they can mix anything into it.
So, your group, are you constantly vigilant now about who you hang out with? Are you into NA, Narcotics Anonymous?
I go to Narcotics Anonymous, but I haven't been going. I haven't been going a lot in the last little while. In the main, lot of young people there. Like right. I'm probably one of the oldest people there.
Right.
Most people are in their 20s. I don't talk about these groups a lot because they're an anonymous group. So
right. Sure.
But the support is there if need be. I tend to go more to AA just because there are more meetings. There's a meeting at noon every day. There's a meeting in the morning every day. There's a meeting every evening. There's 7 days a week.
Okay.
So it's easy.
And what does that do for you?
I think what it does is two things. Two things it does is, number one, it gives me a place I can talk about this stuff and people don't judge it. And the second thing is, I find going there, sometimes I'll see people, and it's terrible to say, but I'll see people that are coming back that have gone out again.
Right.
And I'll see how bad they look. And I'll say, oh my God, I don't want that to be me. So it's just to remember when.
Right.
And because it's easy to start to remember the good things and forget the really bad things.
Right.
Like an abusive relationship kind of thing. And then you go back to it and then it beats you up even worse. But that's why going to meetings I think helps. And I do like going in other places too, because you meet people who are very, have different backgrounds and stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah. How does that play out?
It's pretty cool. You just go to, I was on a cruise. I was on the Oasis of the Sea cruise ship. Right. I find out there's a friend of Bill's meeting. That's what they call it, friend of Bill Wilson. And so just go up, and there was 8 people there. Most of them are from the States. Okay. There was a couple from other countries. Well, one guy didn't speak any English at all, but he just came. And you just do what you do at a regular meeting.
So you just threw this meeting together as passengers?
Yeah, as passengers.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they actually apparently they do this a lot on a lot of places.
I guess that's a place where you'd really need some buddies.
A cruise ship is a good one to go on. It's I've been at all inclusive resorts before, and it's a little more in your face. At the cruise ship, you have to pay for it. So most cruise ships, so it's just not getting thrown at you kind of thing.
Right.
But as I went to the meeting, I didn't go to the meeting because I was really craving anything. I just went to the meeting just so I was more curious.
Right.
So it's sort of fun to do.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
You can't go down to the bar.
Yeah, that's right.
Might as well hang with your own.
Might as well hang. Yeah, exactly.
And I guess you grow a kinship with these people, and you have a tightness that you wouldn't normally get with anyone who doesn't understand your situation.
It's very true, and even I'll be in a place, and I won't even say hi to them, but I'll see them there. I remember when I was sober, probably about 9 months one time, I went to this New Year's Eve party, it was the next year. And when I went there, I thought, oh man, I don't like being here. But then I saw one of the guys from AA. He was there. And I just went over and talked to him, and just talking to him for the 5 minutes and knowing that someone else was going to be over there that wasn't drinking. Just made it so much easier.
And it must get easier over time.
It does get easier over time, although you have to be careful because over time you can get complacent and just sort of forget that, I'm very fortunate because I live in a world where it's not there's none in my home.
Right.
There's not anyone around me who's, my wife will have some wine sometimes, but it's not really it's not a big thing. So. And all your family members, they're there to watch you, to watch your behavior. Drink. Yeah, none of them drink anyway.
Oh, well, there you go. Presbyterian minister.
Yeah, none of them drink. None of my cousins, none of my aunts and sisters, nothing.
So you back into physical activity?
Yeah. I try. I don't kill myself at the gym, but I try to go 3 or 4 times a week. It's just more of a social and just do some stuff, and and I'll be there for a couple of hours, but I'm not, as I said, I'm not really breaking a sweat. I'm just sort of doing different things, and it's just part of, self-care.
Right.
Because when you are in the middle of an addiction, you just don't care about yourself. You look at your body as this means to try to get this feeling you need to get to put yourself out of this other feeling, and It's incredible what you do to your body.
And when you're in the depths of your addiction at the worst points, did you have a depression? Did you feel suicidal?
Yeah, I definitely felt suicidal, but I never wanted to die with people knowing I was an addict. That would run through my mind. I think, how could I off myself without people knowing this is why I offed myself? Because I didn't want to die that way. But that is how desperate you become. You start to entertain ways of trying to get out of this, and you think you have no way out.
And at that point, with those thoughts, was that brought about simply because of the addiction, the strength of the addiction, and not the broken relationships?
Yeah, it was more the strength of the addiction. It was more when I go into withdrawal. When you go into withdrawal, you get pretty desperate, and you want that pain to end any way you can. And if you can't find something to try to stop it, then you just you'll think of other ways to just try to turn it off.
The friends from Homewood that you made while you were there in recovery, you still talk to some of those people?
Yeah.
How are they doing?
Good. They're doing good. They had their, like me, they've had their struggles along the way, but they're all doing, the ones that I talk to are doing well now. There's some that I've lost track of. And I assume that that's probably because they're not doing as well. But, like Dancer and I still talk and
Dancer was one of the girls that you had met there, and you kind of formed a strong relationship. Was it starting to get serious in your mind, or?
I don't think it was. You know what? The feelings were serious. The fact that we could ever do something about it, we knew we couldn't.
Okay.
So it was like we were intentionally allowing ourselves to develop these because at least I was, because I knew I couldn't do anything about it. She lived up there. I wasn't going to upset my life and go up there. And so, but it was more, it was never a physical kind of thing.
Okay.
It was more of a, we just sort of felt bad for each other and we wanted to comfort each other.
Right.
And that's what I think it mainly became.
And she's discussed in your book, different name. You used a different pseudonym for the different people that you met along the way there.
Yes.
So her name, you called her Dancer, and she went to the recovery at the same time as you did, and she had a relapse and left early. Yeah. Left the program early.
Yeah. Well, she just basically she left early. I don't know what happened that weekend, but she did end up leaving early, and she had, she's had quite a few struggles, but she's doing okay now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you still have conversations?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We still have conversations. And it's well, because when this was coming out, I was telling her about it because I wanted her to, and I asked for permission to tell her story because she had a very personal story in there that I wanted to share because I know that happens to a lot of girls.
Right. The abuse.
And I couldn't share that, but I wanted people to be able to, if she would allow me to share that, for people to maybe be able to see that in that and see that it doesn't only happen to them either.
Right.
This happens.
Oh yeah.
In that whole world.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but that's why I was glad that she allowed me to be able to tell it.
And so what are you doing now?
You know what? I love just being a dad. I got a 16-year-old daughter who I run everywhere. She's learning how to drive right now, so it's not too bad. I'm a husband. I have a wife who's a dialysis nurse.
Okay.
And so basically, I try to keep the house clean and run the kids around and just do some stuff for this.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that I don't have to charge anything for it. I don't. I knew when I wrote that book that it was a sharer book too. I knew because I never made it too long. So I knew that probably for every book I sold, I was probably going to have 7 people read it, and I'll never really do well doing that. Do you know what I mean? Right. So it wasn't ever about the money. It was more about trying to get the word out there.
How long did it take you to write the book?
A year.
A year.
Yeah, it took me about a year.
Was that constantly?
That was constantly, except I took a break because Paulette and my partner and I broke up for 3 or 4 months in the middle of all this when I was writing it. And I took a break from January until April of 2 years ago. But aside from that, I was writing most of it in the evenings and stuff.
And these, are you doing speaking engagements now across Charlottetown, or maybe across the island? I'm not sure how.
Well, it's across the island. A lot of them are high schools. I'll speak at school groups. I'll spoken to men's groups. I've spoken to mental health groups. I've spoken to, physicians. I've talked to the nursing students. Just basically anyone who asks, I'll usually go. And all I do is I sort of give them an abbreviated form of that story, and then just try to answer any questions and just try to be honest about what happened. So, I'm just trying to maybe allow someone to see this in themselves before they have to go all the way down the path, like at the early stages kind of thing.
Right.
And the other reason I wrote it, so if they do have family or friends that are caught up in all this, that there is hope, number one. And that the second thing is that, they're sick and they need help.
Do you regret it? Do you regret all this happening in your life? Would you, I mean, it's hard to say. From me looking at it, I would say, for you, I would think that your career, just keeping on that trajectory, that would have been the way to go. And do you look at it and regret that? God, I wish that didn't happen. Wish that didn't, still, to this day, do you look back and sort of regret, or say, that's the way it happened, and I made it through, and things are going good now?
I think it would be very easy for me to say to myself, I wish that never happened. But the thing is that I really believe when we're doing that we're not really taking everything into account. Like, my life could have ended up so much worse, and I've not even known it.
All right.
So, I'm just glad that I got here, however I got here. And I think that, I like to think it happened for a reason. And that maybe I might be able to help some more people out of this. I thought I would be honestly, when I was in my mid-20s, last thing I ever thought we'd be talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Last thing.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. Even with my disability insurance, I'm off on disability. I would have never had disability insurance thinking about this.
Right.
Last thing
Yeah.
I ever thought of.
Yeah.
So it was, I guess I'd be lying if I said that sometimes I wish it never all happened, but I know that if, things might have turned out a lot worse. My kids all get along, my ex-wives all get along, my family all gets along. We're all very, my kids have turned out great. I got a great spouse. I'm happy.
And you've been sober for how many years?
Oh, well, I haven't done narcotics since 2005, and I haven't drank since 2012.
Oh, okay. So you've got a lot of years on your...
Yeah.
So a lot of time to fix any relationships, especially with your daughters, if there was ever anything broken there.
And that would have been from early on. Fortunately, the drinking was so short because they had, they attacked me pretty fast when they pulling intervention on me. But you're right. Those are the kind of things that, thank God they're all good. Like, my kids can come and talk to me about all this stuff, and their friends do. And that's okay.
Do you hear any stories from what's it during the 20s now? The two older ones.
My older ones. Well, both of my older kids don't drink. They never really had that personality anyway. They're sort of like their mom, less adventurous, more, grounded anyway. But the one thing I do notice is that my children's friends will want to talk to me about something if they're struggling with something. And I think that's because I go into the high schools and speak to. Right. The Department of Education, which I'm totally amazed, has purchased this book and put it in all the libraries.
Okay, great.
So they've made it part of the curriculum that, like, I'm totally blown away because it's pretty, it's pretty gritty.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I never held back with the bad language either, but that's the reality of that world.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm very impressed with the fact that they did that. It's just
And that's all across the island, all the high schools?
Yeah, very forward thinking of them.
That is good. And they have somebody who's from this area who've experienced all this.
Exactly, because people will listen to a real story. And you know what? Honest to God, how could I complain about what's happened to me when I get the chance to get up in front of 750 kids and maybe possibly keep one or two of them going down that path? How could I ever complain?
Right.
You know, that's a privilege, really.
And are there more places for these kids to go now where they can talk to somebody? I would imagine there is, but I don't know. I don't have you.
Yeah, because I think what they're even doing is they're putting nurses into the schools now. They're hiring nurses in there. And that's the big thing I try to talk to them about is, get this, go talk to someone about this. Don't keep it quiet. And I do talk about bullying too, because I just talk about we need to be all easier on each other. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's our egos making us, make fun of someone else so it takes the pressure off us. And it's just foolish. Yeah. We don't need to be doing this.
Yeah.
And so I try to get that message. And the same thing with mental health, because mental health is a stigmatized thing and young people don't want to talk about it, but they need to talk about it. And I say these, secrets keep us sick.
Right.
And that we need to share them. Share them with your guidance counselor, share them with your parents, talk to friends you trust. You need to start talking about this stuff. And that's the big message I try to get across.
So what do you see as if there is a daily routine for somebody in recovery? I guess you say you're always in recovery. So how would your day or your week, what things do you do to implement having a clear mind and to keep those triggers from going off?
Yeah, well, the big thing is to keep yourself out of the places that are triggers. So the three things I always told as a homeowner is your work has to be safe, your house has to be safe, and your car needs to be safe. So you make sure that those places are don't have anything in them that are, that could possibly be, troublesome for you. So you don't want to have, I don't have booze in my house. Right? I don't have a liquor cabinet or anything like that. And your work has to be safe if you are going back to work. And there's lots of health professionals that go back to work. They are urine tested randomly for the first 5 years they're at work.
Okay.
And normally, now in PEI, they were going to test me for the rest of my life. That's just because here we don't have a whole structure of what they do like they do in Ontario and most other provinces.
Okay.
I was the only person they were dealing with, so they're sort of making up the rules as they're going along, and I understand that.
Right.
But, typically, so what they typically will do is, I'll tell you what an Ontario physician would do as his routine. He would probably try to go to bed at a decent hour, probably try to get up at a decent hour. He would have to phone every day to see if he needs a urine test done. So what they do is they phone every day and it says yes or no. The first year you're doing it, it'll say yes 24 times. And you have to go give a urine test. You don't know what day it's going to happen. And the next year it's 12. The second year, the next year it's 6. It goes down incrementally. Then they should be doing, they should have a work that is comfortable for them, that isn't super stressful, that they can handle it, that they have support, other professional supports there, and that their work knows what's going on with them, so they don't put them at risk in any kind of way.
Right.
It's imperative that happens. Should have some time to go exercise yourself, because that's healthy. For me, it's very simple. I try not to catastrophize things all the time. I used to. I used to worry about stuff. And now I know I can't control it, so I don't do it. And that's easier said than done. It takes a long time to teach yourself how to do that. But when I was really sick, I would worry about absolutely everything. And it was just the drug making me do that. So I would feel horrible. So I'd justify.
Did you ever try meditation or yoga?
Not until afterwards. I'm not big into yoga. I have tried meditation, and that's how I go to sleep at night. I just basically think of a scene that I find very comfortable and then sort of put more and more detail into the scene as I'm sort of in my mind. And then I find it just sort of flows into a dream and I fall asleep. So it happens. Okay. But I always had problems sleeping until I learned those kind of things.
Oh, is that right? Even before? Okay. And going back to, I guess, if you want to become a doctor, you have to be a high functional person. You have to be very goal oriented. And I suppose that must gnaw at you as well, that you didn't quite make it to whatever goal you're looking for.
Yeah, well, the thing is though, do you ever really make it to the goal you're looking for? And
that's the thing, right?
And that's the way I look back at it. I got pulled from. I'm very blessed that I never hurt anybody. I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed that I never destroyed my family more than I had. Everything's been okay, and that I've got a chance to be able to put this out there that maybe someone else is going to get help through all this. So as I look back at myself, and I look back at that guy that was standing shaking in the room so bad that he couldn't even eat food.
Right.
And I've come to this point where I'm able to tell my story and hopefully help people. That's a lot. That's a long way to come.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with the fact that my life has gone in this direction. As much as I wish it had. Sometimes that it hadn't, but where I am is pretty good.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And anything for the future? Any plans?
I don't know. I'm gonna wait till my daughter's 16, and she's gonna probably go away to school, and then I'll be able to figure out. One of the reasons I've been reluctant to work here is that there's not any other physicians in recovery here that I know of. So I find it. So I just find myself a little isolated. We've tried to get some health professional groups going, and it's just never ever happened.
Okay.
So I think if I was in a place where I had a lot of support and a lot of things, I might find something I want to do. But right now,
there's no intentions of ever moving to one of those bigger places.
Well, that could definitely happen. Definitely happen. And I'm not looking at that. I'd rather stay on the island if my parents are here. But I would definitely think about going somewhere else, especially if my youngest daughter goes somewhere, because my other two kids, one's finishing engineering and the other one's off the island now. So it would probably be in the Maritimes though, because I like the Maritimes.
Right. Even Halifax is quite a busy place there. I imagine they'd have.
Halifax is fantastic, and I lived there for 6 years when I was in medical school, so I know the city well. My best friend lives over there. One of my daughters is already over there. It's something that I've definitely thought about. You're only 3 hours and 2.5 hours from home.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's something I've thought about. Islanders have been extremely good to me about all this, like unbelievable response. I was honestly nervous when I first put it out there. I thought
you've opened up your whole life.
Yeah, and I was worried because my kid, I had to talk to my kids first and my parents about this, and I always say, people say you were brave doing it. I'm not brave. My family's brave for letting me do this.
Right.
So, that's the way I feel, and so. Yeah.
Do you know how many copies you've sold so far?
I know that we've sold at least 5,000 because we had to do a reprint. So that's the type right now, trying to get that all done before Christmas.
Isn't that a Canadian bestseller?
It is. Yes, it would be. It was in the week of bestsellers in August of this year. So It's doing, I can't believe it, actually. I really can't believe it. But it's an easy read.
Yeah.
It is an easy read, and it's. I tried to make it that way that if some guy was struggling on the street, he could pick it up and read it as a story and not get bored with it and put it down, kind of thing. I wanted to sort of.
And is it more difficult for a narcotics user to get clean than an alcoholic or someone else in another addiction?
Good question. I think that certain ones are really, really very, very difficult. Crystal meth is one. You're talking about crystal meth is really hard. Certain things are more addicting. Heroin is like any narcotic is tough to stop just because they feel so physically horrible. And but at least with heroin narcotics, there's something you can put them on methadone or Suboxone right now and try to get their lives stabilized with that.
Right.
Because harm reduction, basically you are giving them the medication, but it's not giving them that where they're high or anything. It's just keeping them from going into withdrawal. Okay. So they actually just feel normal.
That's something else I wanted to ask you about. What do you think of the methadone program?
I think that it's honestly, when I first came out, I was sort of against it because I thought, oh well, I never got to use it.
Right.
So I got to use it for a short time, but if you have habitual users that basically cannot get themselves clean, they're most of the girls are selling themselves to pay for the drugs, and most of the guys are committing crimes to pay for it. So it allows their lives to get stabilized. They get their jobs back.
But some of these people have been using it. I've heard stories here on the island where people have been 10 years and more.
Oh, 100%. And there's some people, when they start them, they say they're going to need to take it for the rest of their life. Is there any problem if they're on a low dose and it's not affecting them? Absolutely not. It'd be like taking a blood pressure pill that kept your blood pressure down for the rest of your life. I think that's where we get too much of this thing going on in our head.
Right.
Now, when you see people sitting nodding off because they're on too much methadone, that does upset people. But you try to get a person on the minimal amount dose that they can take and still not have those cravings. Because let's say you're taking Suboxone. It doesn't matter if you have a craving or if you even use it. The medication and the drug will cancel it. So that's what Suboxone has Narcan in it. The same thing they use for opioid overdoses.
Right, okay.
So if you go out and you have taken your Suboxone like they give you every day, and you go out and you use for some reason, it'll cancel it out. You won't
feel the effects?
You get no effect. Zero.
Okay.
Zero. So it's almost a safety thing to give people too.
Right.
Because it keeps them from possibly going out and using something that is going to kill them.
So you're in agreement with this?
I am in agreement. I am definitely in agreement with them with doing it. I think that we need to do anything we can to get people to stop using because there's so much Hep C contracted with it, and HIV with dirty needles and sharing needles and all that stuff. Not to mention the fact that you can get a dose of fentanyl, anytime.
Right.
If you're buying stuff off the streets, it's plus all the criminal activity that you have to be involved in to keep your habit going.
Right.
It gets them out of that whole world. It gets them away from those people.
Is there anything to be done where we can mitigate even the addictive side before it happens, or if something hits you in your life and throws you for a loop, and you just, like yourself, just all of a sudden innocently get hooked on something, didn't know it was going to come. Is there a way, if it is an emotional problem, is there anything you could do to help that? Before an addiction starts, it's a very good. I think teaching people to talk about things much earlier.
Particularly in men, because men are terrible about not talking about stuff that's bothering them.
And there's a lot of alcoholics out there.
Exactly, 100%, and that's because they just have everything bottled up inside and all their emotions, and the only thing they can do is numb it away with booze because they can't talk about it, and that's why. Trying to get people to talk early about things, and that's why I get into this message about that. Like I had been able, perhaps had been able to share how absolutely devastated I was with my first divorce somehow, and been able to reach the right people and got the right support. Would this all happen to me? I don't know, but I might have had a chance if I was educated.
Right.
And same with that's why I try to get this out there to educate people with the problem, because I like what they say in AA. It's really good. You don't have to. It's a good expression. You don't have to go all the way to the dump to get off the garbage truck.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can get off at any time. So if you see that you're having an issue and certain things you're reading, you'll say, "Holy smokes!" I think I'm struggling here.
Yeah.
I have a doctor friend who told me 3 women came to him over the winter and told them they were alcoholics. And he asked them how they knew it, and I said because they read that book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was just so happy.
It's touching people. People can recognize it in their own lives by reading this.
Yeah.
So it's something good to.
It's something, I had no intentions of that. I left a lot of the alcoholism out of that book intentionally because I didn't want to. I was trying to focus more on narcotic addiction. I didn't want to water down my message too much.
Right.
But. That's one of the aspects that I probably would like to write more on.
Do you think you'd ever write another book?
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And part two?
It's sort of part two. It would be more focusing on how alcohol impacted me right from, even though I wasn't drinking a lot when I was young, when I did, and then how it affected my decisions and how it really impacted my life later on. So, it's a sneaky substance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had a problem with the booze as well for probably almost 20 years.
Yes.
I quit 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, like we spoke earlier, my big trigger is when I'm happy, at my happiest time.
100%.
The first trip we went on, we went to Cuba, my first 6 months in. And I got there and it went through my mind, oh, wouldn't a couple of beer be just perfect now? And I even said to my wife, I said, I think I'll just have a couple of beer. And she said, no, don't. And I said, yeah, just one beer. She said, it's not going to be one beer. You know where it's going to lead.
Yeah,
You're going to be passed out on the beach somewhere. And they'll be picking you up at 4 a.m.
Good for her.
Yeah. And then I thought about it. I stopped and I thought, yeah, you're right. It's going to lead to nowhere good.
Yeah, because one is what do they say? One is too many, 1,000 is never enough. So you just get that one, you get that feeling again. It's probably 2 that ends up finishing you. Because when you get that buzz from 2 beer, then it's just your inhibitions are gone.
Yeah.
Off to the races.
Yeah, and then you don't, like I said, I think you said there, you don't know. That's the way to tell if you're an addict. You don't know the outcome once you start drinking. You don't know where you're going to end up.
Predict.
Yeah,
it's a scary thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And I've ended up in some bad places at times when I'm away from home and in a different city.
I know, wandering streets in the middle of the night that I should not be walking around. Like, I've done that too. Just you're thinking, this is negative consequences, or it could be even worse.
That's
it
right.
could be a lot worse.
But the thing about alcohol, you feel on top of the world.
Invincible.
Yeah. It's a great armor.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's so tricky when you mix it up with drugs too, because you keep that social side of what everyone thinks is you're just drinking. It's social, but when you can mix it in there, and that's how a lot of people get away with continuing longer than they probably normally would, because their friends accept it because they think they're just drinking. Right. They don't realize they're high on something.
Yeah. So you've mixed both, you say?
In the end, in 2005, I think it was around December of 2004, I tried to get myself off narcotics by drinking, and it did not work. It ended up making me drink alcoholically when I hadn't my whole life.
Yeah.
And by the end of that whole time, I was on top of doing all the Dilaudid I was doing. I was drinking like 4 liters of wine a quart a day. It was just, it was insane.
How many stories were similar to yours where there was no addiction problem until later in life?
Not a lot. It's not common. And I think that's one of the things that's helped me in the end, because if you start drugs when you're really, really young, your brain stops maturing. So if you stop when you're 13, you start when you're 13. When you quit when you're 26, your brain's still like a 13-year-old. So your coping skills and your ability to be able to deal with things, or even to understand what they're telling you, is much less than if it had to happen later in your life when you had developed some world experiences. So I think that was one of the things that was helpful for me. But the other thing is when you don't lose, when that doesn't happen until you've accumulated a lot. You take a 40-year-old man and rip everything out of his money. I had to go bankrupt. I had to go, I lost everything. Yeah. Everything that I'd worked for, plus your career. You have so much more to lose. Yeah. And that's tough. That's petrifying. Yeah, it is petrifying. Yeah. It is petrifying. And I think that's why, why I'm talking about this, because I don't want it to happen to other people, because it sucks. Yeah. It really does. And if some guy just happened to show up at someone's thing and talk about it, and it made some guy think differently, he might not even know how much it impacted him. Are you a sponsor? No. No, and I was doing it, but I just find that it's hard to. Right now, what I do is anyone who messages me on Facebook, and I'll get probably 3 or 4 a week. And I just sort of basically support them. You're doing well. You need to get into rehab. You need to go transition. That kind. And just try to be there and say, I did it. You can do it, kind of thing, just as a support. So I try not to let myself, focus on one person, kind of thing. So I've just chosen not to.
Okay. Where's your next speaking engagement?
That's a good question. I have these, and then it'll probably be at one of the high schools. I did East Wilshire the other day. I did the parents at East Wilshire.
Okay.
That we had, I spoke to the students the grade 9 students last spring. So there was going to be a parent night. So we had that last week. And then I spoke for Holland College last week as well. And then I did the Dental Association had a thing in the evening. So they asked me to come and, talk, which is interesting. It's good to go to these different groups and
you're kind of giving them trigger or giving them examples of what to look for. That's the point in going to these.
Well, two things. Number one is one of those guys that's sitting in the guys or girls sitting in that room could have a problem. Okay. Right. Can I make them maybe recognize it? That's one thing. Second thing would be maybe to recognize it in someone who's around them. And then people will typically ask, how do I approach this person? What do I do if I'm concerned about somebody? And then that's something we need to, because everyone's a little different too.
Well, now that's a good. It doesn't have to lead to shooting it up. It could be just a pill,
absolutely,
a prescription pill, which people think this is fine.
Exactly.
But when the prescription runs out, that's when it starts to become a problem, and they'd have to look for it on the streets. I would imagine. I don't know how long you can keep going with these prescriptions.
Oh, well, it depends on, they've really, they've become much tighter about it because now you have to at least give your health card when you get it.
Okay.
We're actually a lot tighter in Canada, the United States. My gosh, they get Percocet out down there like it's candy.
Really?
Yes. In Florida, it's unbelievable. Like these little medicine shop pain clinics, and people will go in there and then just go to another one down the street. And you can't do that here. Here in PEI, if you get a prescription for a narcotic at this pharmacy, everyone across the province at any pharmacy knows. So if you try to go get another one, it'll show up.
So it's all on one digital board?
It's one on, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really hard, and that became an issue for me, as I was going through what I was going through, because they were starting to put these rules in place. And, so it's good because that ended up giving me...
Well, it's made it harder, too, for people who legitimately need to use something for... I had every 3 or 4 years, I used to get a cough, and I just could not get rid of it, and it would last for a month, maybe 2 months, and just dry cough, drive you crazy. And somebody told me, hey, he said, you can go and ask for this cough medicine. They keep it behind the counter. You have to ask for it. And it has some codeine in it. So I did that one year. I went and got this syrup, and it didn't take it away entirely, but it did help a lot better. Yeah. And I really didn't like that feeling, that bit of a spacey feeling. It didn't do anything for me at all. So I knew I wouldn't never become addicted to it. So a few years went by, and I went, and it came on again, this cough, and I went to the local pharmacy. I asked for it again, and then I got questioned.
Oh, they make you feel bad.
Yeah.
I know. I just got this like 2 years ago. Folks.
Yeah. And I was thinking, I wanted to tell them, look, man, I'm not addicted to it. I got a really bad cough.
And you know what? That's one of the biggest conundrums, and certain physicians will identify that. We have people who really, really need pain medication that really need to get it.
Right.
Versus, we don't want to be making addicts out of people or setting them up for it, but we can't be withholding treatment from people who really need it. So it's trying to find that balance because...
well, they wouldn't give it to me at that time. Then he told me I had to go and get a prescription, which I don't think was right, because I think you were still
be able to get it.
You still were allowed, as far as I was told, people had told me, you could still ask for it.
I would imagine, because if it only has 8 milligrams of codeine in it per mil, then that's the same as buying a Tylenol 1 over the counter, which you can buy over the counter.
Oh, okay.
So you can buy Tylenol with codeine over the counter in Canada, which they can't in the States. So people will come up from the States and buy bottles of, and see, up until 2007, you could go to every different pharmacy and buy 100 pills of the Tylenol 1s, which have... Okay, so Tylenol 1 has 8 milligrams of codeine in it. Tylenol 3, the prescription one, has like 30.
Okay.
So if you took 4 of the ones, it's equal to the... So, that's what people would do. So they had to just use the health cards, and that's how they get people from not being able to go around and buy a whole bunch anymore.
Right. So, and with this new program, it's flagged. So they know that you bought this here.
They know, yeah. 100%.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you can't do that. So if somebody does have a legitimate prescription, they could possibly get that prescription for quite a while.
Well, if there was refills on it.
If there's refills.
Yeah, only if there was refills. And doctors are getting a little smarter too. They know that some people are there's a big incentive to sell your pills if you think about how much money you can make. It's crazy. Like it's crazy. Like a Dilaudid on the streets was almost $30.
Wow.
And to buy them, they're pennies. At the pharmacy. So it's there's an incentive for people who have real legitimate pain to maybe sell some of their medications to pad, because they can't work because of their pain for whatever reason. And it's dangerous. Yeah. It's dangerous because there's people out there who will end up talking people. Now there isn't as much of that as there used to be. I have to say that I see, but obviously kids are still getting addicted, so they're getting it from somewhere.
Did you hear too? Now there was a piece done on a news show in the States, and how easy it was to order fentanyl from China.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You saw that? Boxes of the powder. Wow.
That's basically where it's coming from, is China. Any of the fentanyl, I'm sure it's around here. We had it in patches and stuff here, but it was never this powdery form that is so, and that absolutely scares me. That you get a kid that's just going to take a pill with their friend, and that they probably shouldn't be doing that anyway, but they end up dying, overdosing. Yeah. So
it is scary. You wonder what else, especially when you've got young kids and you don't know what they're exposed to. And
well, that's why I tell people if you have narcotics in your house, treat them like a gun. If you are on pain medication for whatever reason in your house, and this is take it and lock it up, because if your kid doesn't take it, one of their friends might, and you want to be responsible for that. Right. So it's you have to treat it like a weapon, and just hide it, lock it, do something with it, because you're setting teenagers up to have it out there. Yeah. If not your own, one of their friends. So lock it up.
Good advice. Well, that must be over an hour. Okay. Did good. The book is The Golden Boy: A Doctor's Journey with Addiction by Grant Matheson, and you can get it at the local
Indigo or Bookmark. Yeah, we they're having some copies are just coming in again, so we have the new print coming out. It won't have there's one I can tell the older ones because there's a misspelling right here. That should say addiction, and it says edition.
Oh, edition.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the new one won't have that mistake in it. But anyway, so you can get this at here on the island and check it out. And check out. Do you have a website? Or?
Well, I just have a Facebook page, but certainly, people have any questions, I don't mind them just sending me a message on Facebook.
Yeah, you respond to me pretty quick. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I try to, because it's people are. And it's not like I know the answers for these problems, because I don't. I've fumbled through this myself. But there is hope. People can recover from this stuff. And if nothing else, sometimes just chatting about it with someone else makes you feel a little better.
Yeah, and getting into AA or NA.
100%.
That's the people there, they know exactly what you're going through.
They do, and then people, it's like someone said to me the other day, I don't want to go in the room because people will recognize me. I said, well, if they recognize you, number one, they're there because they have a problem too, so they're not going to tell anybody. Right. They never do. They're worried about themselves. So. Yeah,
and just probably to see, the other thing, to see somebody who was a doctor, former doctor, who has humbled themselves and going to a program, for somebody who's just a lay person, like I say, it inspiring.
Well, to me, it would mean that, for me, when I think about it, I would think, holy crap, this is pretty serious when a doctor has to come here to get help. Right. You know what I mean? So obviously he couldn't do it himself. So I might as well forget that idea. I think I'll come here too. Right. So that's what I'm hoping would happen from that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And maybe we'll be on again when you get the next book out.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.